Welcome back everyone, this is part 4 to our complete series going to 4WDing in beach and sand conditions. Now if you've missed any of the series that we've done so far from part 1 through to part 3, there'll be links in the description below to take you back to any one of those 3 that you've missed, and as you see on the screen you'll see the different subject matter that we looked at in each one of those parts. We also cover a bit more in relation to those parts inside of those series, so that's just the main headings, so we do go into it a little bit more. And throughout the series we do revisit some of the topics as we go along, but we mostly focus particularly on those items, and so sometimes it's really important to go back and have a look at those if you need to get some basics down, or if you think that we've missed something, we've probably brought it up somewhere else. So that's our part 3 was our last one, where we looked at the advanced driving, self-recovery, trying to avoid mistakes. We did mention driving through salt water is not a great idea, which is what's going on here at the moment, so we avoid that at all costs when we try and protect their cars to not do us damage. But we'll be looking at doing water crossings and sand driving and a few other bits and pieces in this part 4. And part 5 we'll be looking at snatch-strap recoveries from both rated and unrated, what you can do, and some best practices. And if you haven't already, I would also encourage you to subscribe to our channel, not only for this series that we're doing now, but we do have product reviews coming out very soon, as soon as I get a chance to video and test the bogged out stuff that I have now, as well as the 4WD detail products that I have been testing and using to make sure it, one, cleans off the salt and protects your chassis. So that will be coming out soon, as well as I just released a video for our trip where we did salmon fishing down at Chains Beach as well, so I'll put a link in the description to that video if you want to go and check that trip out. As well, I draw your attention to this diagram. You'll notice that of most people that watch the videos, 90% don't or are not subscribed, so if you're not subscribed, I would really thoroughly encourage you to subscribe to our videos, because it helps us grow, it helps us continue to create this content. And if you're watching it and enjoying it, might as well hit the subscribe button and then keep up to date with everything that comes out. Big thank you to our Patreon supporters, and if you want to be a part of that, link in the description will tell you all about what you get as a Patreon member and the benefits for that. So this is part 4, what we'll be covering. So basically it's water crossing. So this is some some of the stuff that this is obviously not what we want to see happening. These are all just some footage of things that are not ideal for water crossings. So when we're looking at water crossings for real, we're looking at doing it in best practice. So doing it so that you're not going to end up in a very bad situation, because it can end up in a really bad situation. So like this, they've driven along and somehow ended up in this giant big mud water hole that they may not have checked and just driven straight into. Now, one, getting out of that is a problem, and then 2, all of that water and dirt is now inside that car. So we want to try and avoid these sort of things by using the right sort of practices right from the start. So we encourage that, and that's what we look at here. And one of those being is that we pre-set up for recoveries prior to doing any sort of water crossings. So when we do a water crossing, we'll have recovery equipment set up on the vehicle that's doing the crossing, and the vehicle on the other side, on either side, may be prepared to assist in a recovery if you're stuck in the middle. The last thing you want to be doing is doing a recovery whilst you're in the middle of a water crossing. So this is Warren River. Now Warren River, you've got to test out and make sure the silt's not moving in a particular area or flowing very fast. So you sort of walk it out and you make sure you get the right sort of area that you're going to cross at. And it's not necessarily the shortest point between it. You'll notice that there's some areas that are darker patches and some areas are lighter. You can see, you might be able to see that there's a person standing right out in the middle of the water there. they're directing the cars as they go through, so they're keeping them in line with the lower portion, the section that we know is firm, that everyone's going through without any difficulty, and staying away from any other areas that may result in you getting stuck. The last thing you want to do is start losing traction, and then you put your foot down and then you basically break that crust and you bury your car. So you drive really slowly, you reduce any sort of bow flick that you get at the front, so you just want to drive through nice and easy. You probably didn't sit there, but the person there is directing to make sure you've gone on the right arc to get through. So here's when you see it from this side, because there's a video of my car here, now that blue arrow now, where it points to this darker portion, and that's the shortest point between the two points. Now, the last thing you want to do is try and do something smart where you send it and you drive straight through from the shortest point and you just plow through the deep stuff and try and make through one speed. You could end up damaging your car like the earlier versions of videos you saw. You might as well do it properly, do it right, and you can see we've marked out and we walk through and you get out nice and easy, and it's not very deep. You can see here I've attached the recovery equipment. It's come through and it just comes through my front window, so it's ready to go just in case something went wrong. This one now, this is a little bit harder because this isn't clear water, this is a mud water crossing, so you can't actually see the bottom of this. So these can be quite dangerous, it can get quite deep. You'll notice at some point this is actually sped up, this portion. There is a portion where I slow it down to normal speed, but you notice there's barely any movement of the water or bow effect around the front of the tyre, because I literally am idling through because I don't want to break the crust, because the arrow is pointing to where my tyres are just, I'm literally barely touching the throttle and I'm letting the car just idle through on 4 low, because I don't want to break that crust, because if you break that crust and the tyre sinks in, and you might get the tendency or the urge to put your foot down, then all you're going to do is just bury that tyre in and you get stuck and you're going to have to get recovered out of that, and that's the last thing you want to see happening in these types of situations, especially if it's a long one. You see there, in that section there, I dropped in a little bit deeper on that right hand side. We knew there was a section there that was a little bit deeper, so you can sort of see in that top corner there were people that were set up ready to recover and give me assistance if something went wrong. Here, this is at normal speed. That's how slow I actually drive through that stuff. So I don't drive through it fast. There is no rush to this. The whole purpose is to use the fact that you've deflated your tyres, you're maintaining a big traction presence on the ground, and you're just trying to roll across it nice and easy. There's the arrow, that's pointing towards the cars that are set up to assist if I need help with the recovery. And yeah, this is me driving through at normal pace, so this is not sped up, this is normal footage. I am just letting it go through at the idle speed, and you can see that there's no issues with that. So this can be kind of difficult, and you may want to walk these ones out first to get a sense of it, but every type is different. Now these ones, we're looking at sand stuff, so these looks a little bit different because you're looking on angles. So sometimes when you're going up sand areas like this, now like this one here for example, where the arrow is pointing to now, when I came over that hill, I didn't notice that it was actually on an angle like that. So the car was tilted really badly to the side there, and actually had to take the other angle when I went out. I didn't notice that track. And then you get these Wombat holes that you see now on the track. So you can see that people have actually made a new track on the outside because of the amount of damage that has been caused to this track, because people are driving through here, and when they hit certain areas like this, part of their tyres lose contact with the surface and it churns like this one here, or churn, you'll be driving it along, all of a sudden a wheel will drop through that section and it'll just start churning that area, and I'll just dig that hole deeper. and you'll end up with what we call a wombat hole, and the last thing you want to do is falling in one of those. So you want to be able to drive nice and smoothly. This one's also on an angle, even though the picture doesn't show up very well. It's actually on a bit of an angle like that as you drive across it. So really be careful when you're doing some of that sand driving in certain areas. Some of it can be like this, where it's not too bad, where the angle of the actual track's pretty good, and you don't usually have to deal with much, but you might have to deal with, like here you've got limestoney sections, and that can be tricky to navigate to try and avoid sharp rocks and so forth. But then you can also go through sections where it's really, the sand is actually really soft. You've got really deep ruts themselves. So this section that comes up here, when you come across the hill, and you've always got to be careful as you go over hills, if you don't know what's on the other side, you don't want to climb them too quickly, because you also don't know who's coming the other way as well. So you have to also think about that as you do a lot of this driving. That's why I'm sticking further out to a certain side. And you can see this one here, this is quite soft sand, this section, especially if you're hitting hills like on some of these sand climbs. If you hit a hill, a lot of people, instead of using the right tire pressure, like this is a really soft sand, it's quite rutted and chopped up. We had people getting bogged on this hill and on this blind corner. There's actually someone bogged around the blind corner. So don't floor it and go around a corner, because you might end up crashing into somebody's bogged around a blind corner like that. So, but it was all rutted out. But you find that if you drive up nice and easy and slow with good tire pressure and the right sort of in-floor load, then you shouldn't have any issues like that sort of situation, and you actually firm up the trek and make it better for the next people that are coming behind you. This one I just included to demonstrate here. This is actually a really wonderful beach because it's so firm and it is so wide, to show you with turning around on beaches, to always be aware, like you might not always have a beach like this where you can pretty much turn wherever you want. In this example we have such a wide area. I think a little arrow will show you right over towards the left hand side is where the water actually is sitting at its high tide. You'll have a tiny bit of water up a little bit further, but it's still quite, this whole section is very firm, so you can easily do turns, and you can tell by the indentation of the previous tracks that this section is really easy to do turns on. So when you're driving along any sort of beach, you look as you drive for areas where you go, this is a firm section, this is an area I can do a turn in, so that if you continue further ahead but you can't find one, you know that you can reverse backwards to a point that you found previously. So this one was a great beach, so you could just turn pretty much anywhere, wherever you wanted. The other thing is, if you're coming off a beach, usually when you're coming off a beach, that's where it's all churned up and rutted. As you can see here, it's quite churned up. It creates a lot of angles. You can see here that was rutted and wombatty, and then it dropped, and then it started the other side. Now I did actually go around this one, but I didn't get the chance to film it because I came back out because I wanted to, we were fishing further down, but I did go further over that, and it was quite a weird way of getting around. This one was the last one, just to show you some driving in sand through up sand hills, or even just dunes, sand hills, any of that sort of type, where you're looking at the surface of the sand, because every sand hill or dune is going to be different. So the first one I went up, I didn't really put a lot of effort and power into it, and this one I went further out and didn't use any tracks, and I turned really sharply, and as you can tell with this blue arrow, you can see how deep the car dug in as it turned that time. So I reversed back down from that position, and as you see there, I drove straight up this time, went through that section I had turned up and got through to the top and turned around. This is all being sped up, by the way. I don't actually drive that fast normally. This was mainly just to indicate, used just to direct your attention to our angles when we're going up and down sand hills or dunes, is to face in the direction that that dune is going in. So this one's going straight down. Now then you can either go down that way, or you could turn off the edge and go to the right hand side. So I want to go to the right hand side, so I turned at that point and went straight down that right hand side turn. And finally, I missed this in part 3 and I wanted to include it. This is from Calc Uphill, just to show you. This is the section from the very bottom to the first stage. Just to show you, this is at normal pace, so I haven't sped this up. This is at normal driving speed footage. You can see all the sand flicking out the back, but this is recording from the back of my vehicle, and you can see how far away that the ocean is when I actually reach the very top of the first stage, to give you an idea of how far you actually climbed in relation to the previous video. So I haven't actually reached the top. I'm at that first stage from the previous video. So that's where the ocean is. It's a long way to go. For part 5, it's going to be snatch recoveries, both looking at rated and unrated. So when you best practice, all around that sort of stuff, and a few other bits and pieces that I may not have covered already. Big thanks to our Patreon supporters, and as I mentioned, check out the link if you're interested in looking at Patreon. And if you like the video, obviously like and subscribe. It helps us immensely and continue to create content to bring you. And thank you for listening.